I have been with the company VQ since we founded it formally in 2006. And in fact, I can trace some time before the business existed specifically as VQ prior to that. So yeah, I've been here for quite a long time and pleased to work with Brad. Brad, I guess your introduction.
Oh, yes. Well, I've been at VQ almost 2 years now, going on. Time flies. I'm a solutions architect, and I work with Giles as his business partner. Before VQ, I spent many years serving the U.S. Department of Defense and intelligence communities, working for Cisco Systems and supporting some of the same customers that we support now.
Generically, the customer community that we serve have various security requirements which restrict them from using the tools that we would be familiar with in the enterprise or the consumer space. So at the moment, we're using a WebEx tool to join in this call and hit the recording. And so, of course, the customers that we're talking about have issues with using tools which could potentially leave them open to people eavesdropping and obviously getting information which they shouldn't be party to. So with that as the kind of entry point, then you look at how does that actually transpire to the tooling that we provide and help and assist those agencies do things in a more secure way. So this term often comes up of what's called air-gapped or self-hosted. And this is where an organization has said, look, we don't trust things on the internet. We want to have control over it. We want to ensure that it's running on networks and data centers that we have control over, and therefore we know that it's our people talking to our people than potentially somebody who shouldn't be eavesdropping into our conversation. So that's the kind of baseline. It's not in the internet space, it's in this air-gapped world, and we want to obviously have security and control over who can call who. Specifically pertaining to the US Department of Defense, which, as Brad said, is a really key vertical market for us. But they do obviously have certain restrictions and rules about who they also want to work with. So we've invested in some security accreditations, and we clearly take that as a very, very serious part of our offering, to a point where we have what's called an approved product status. So it's been tested by various government agencies to ensure that we tick the box and we address certain of the things that they may be concerned about. And we obviously have to maintain and sustain that certification.
The US DoD and the federal government and many governments throughout the world spare no expense when it comes to cryptography standards. And because of that, as you alluded to, Giles, they have through the auspices of NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology, developed the FIPS standard, and FIPS cryptography modules need to be used. They're required by law for the US DoD, and so VQ has gone to great expense and to be sure that our products are FIPS compliant, FIPS 140-2 and beyond. And with that capability, that's what allows us to be certified through JITC on the approved products list.
The key element from this is that it is a specialist field, and that's where VQ has put all its energy into, which is why we're very proud to be partnering with Cisco in all of these accounts, because VQ is not a software without related platforms to work with, and we elected to work with the best, and Cisco's partnership has led us into numerous accounts where the combination of our software platform and their infrastructure delivers the services that these customers are needing.
I don't think that there really are. I think the requirements are largely the same. In fact, some of the civilian agencies, which for instance include law enforcement, are very happy to see the certifications that are used and allow us to be accredited within the Department of Defense. And there are civilian agencies, and even beyond the public sector, US DoD and Federal, within other regulated industries where these requirements are equally important. So the architecture and the capabilities that allow us to serve DoD, national leadership, and the intelligence community are embraced by federal agencies as well.
The difference between the requirements is it's almost impossible to put a sort of a piece of paper between the two, because whether you're, as Brad said, a law enforcement agency that could be termed federal, but you're not Department of Defense, they still have the same levels of requirements. So if you've been able to invest and deliver your product into those environments which, if you like, are at the top of the pyramid of security paranoia, if we can use that generic overview, then actually that just plays out to people that are, if you like, further down that paranoia curve. So it is the same product. There is nothing that we do saying, oh, it's going to this place, we'll turn some things on or we'll turn some things off. We actually just deliver the same thing. And so the ability for people to look at the accreditations or where it's deployed and say, hey, if it's good enough for that environment, then it's definitely going to be okay for mine. Doesn't mean to say that they don't go through their own testing or rigorous security evaluations, but it sort of eases the burden because it just saves them a bit of time. Clearly, when you're starting to enter into a market, you have to do all the hard yards. You have to do all the hard work and prove to everybody that you know what you're doing. And we have a great team of engineers that support Brad and I. I think we get the opportunity to talk to the customers for the first time, but actually we're backed up by a bunch of really smart people that have figured out how to address those concerns, how to look at all those weird and wonderful regulations and rules and cryptography type stuff, which is way above my pay grade and certainly way above my intelligence curve for sure, and address those and keep on top of them as well, which is great. So when we get into those deep conversations, we're very capable of actually helping people saying, actually, that's a great idea, but you need to be looking 2 steps further down the line. And fortunately, we've got a great team that help us with that. So yeah, to kind of come back to the point, is there a difference between the two? No, we don't treat anybody any differently. If you can check the box at the top of the security paranoia curve, then those people that maybe have fewer of those issues, they should be okay as well. So conference manager, let me start with that. I mentioned that we partner with Cisco because Cisco has some awesome infrastructure and specifically a product called the Cisco Meeting Service. So the Cisco Meeting Server is a very powerful box with a really rich API. So what Conference Manager allows people to do is combine the best infrastructure with our software and allows the user, if you will, or the operators or the administrators to build a service. And that service is generically called Unified Collaboration, so voice and video services. So it allows people to say, hey, we have a community of users, and they could be individuals sat in front of a MacBook, or they could be in front of a device in a conference room, and they want to basically be able to connect those calls together in very prescribed and controlled ways. They want to be able to manage those conference experiences. They want to analyze and report on those conference experiences. And so from a very simple, it's a box with some software, building a service, those services actually become, in some cases, very large. You could have 50 or 100,000 people in an organization wanting to have calls, as most people do, at 10 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, regular conferences with multiple participants in all sorts of places in and around the world using different devices. But to come back to where we were about Federal and DoD, in a very secure environment. So they could be in very secure meeting rooms with all sorts of restrictions about who can access them and so on. So build services, manage services on top of Cisco Meeting Service. So that's Conference Manager. We've extended software now to actually also allow those administrators to look after what we call the devices. So those are the video conferencing systems that sit in those meeting rooms. The big flat panel screen with a camera and a bunch of microphones and speakers. And specifically, those devices need to be told what they can do, what they can't do, what are the rules around how they behave. And you go, well, what on earth does that mean? A very simple example is that most people are familiar with a conference room with a camera and the big screen, and there's probably a little microphone device somewhere on the table. Now, you may want to say, if I just sat in the room, was having a conversation with Brad and having a chat about something, the last thing I want to be worried about is that that microphone has turned itself on and somebody's having a little listen to what we're talking about. So one of the things that we can do with our device management is push down a software instruction that says, hey, that microphone is off until I join a video conference call and I actually lean across the desk and press the button on the top that goes from red to green, and then I know that people are actually joining the call and listening to me. So it's a very simplistic view and probably overly simplistic, but this is where VQ has gone from building services to managing devices. And then the last thing I want to talk about is VQ Metro, and this is a range of tools that we've created that allow the users, so you and I sat in front of our MacBook or whatever tool we might have, our Android phone or our iPhone, or indeed in front of one of those conference rooms. And Metro gives me the access to the services. So this is the user saying, I want to call with you guys. I'm in front of this device. I want to ask them to join a call, so I may schedule it for today or next week, or indeed I want to join a call now and I can come on audio because I've got a phone in my hand. You guys have got video. You're in a conference room. Brad, you're in front of a Mac. So it's a combination of all of that tooling, which we generically call Metro. So build a service with Conference Manager and run it. Device management, look after the conference facilities in the meeting rooms, and then Metro give all the tools to the users so that they can serve themselves on top of perhaps a service where you might have somebody looking after those big high profile town hall type conferences. So that's what the software does. Hopefully that makes some sense. And Brad, you're probably going to correct me, or maybe you're just going to say that was the best description.
No, it was excellent. I was just thinking, maybe a little slogan for Metro would be fulfilling the promise of an excellent conference anywhere, anytime, on any device. Not only do we take care of the cryptographic issues and security issues that exist, it's the VQ architecture, which, as Giles mentioned before, is air-gapped and on-premise. And through that architecture, we give a MilDep or an enterprise the ability to control their own destiny and not to rely on some of the aggregation that can occur when you centralize services in a cloud, even if that cloud service is excellent, just by the kind of focus of that architecture. There may be something that's good for Jack, but not good for Jill. And we give all that control back to the individual agency, including the ability to meet whatever regulations and security requirements they may have, again, through the beauty of an on-premise architecture.
Clearly in this environment, it's not possible to name names, and it would be incorrect of us to even sort of insinuate who uses the software. In terms of the challenges with these environments, some of these customers have been with us now. I can think of one who's been one of our most demanding users for about 4.5 years, and they have a global deployment. They have various levels of network security, so there's multiple instances of VQ in that environment. And so the reality of the deployment in such an in-paced environment like that is that there is a lot of dialogue back and forth with our engineering teams, because not necessarily problems, but hey, this is maybe taking us a little bit of time. Is there any way you guys that are in charge of the software can make things better for our operators to deliver to our mission? So that could be removing a couple of mouse clicks by automating a process. That could be changing a user interface entirely so that people that are actually accessing the software have what they need rather than having to select things and using drop downs and things like that. So there's a lot of back and forth, and we call this generically a thing called CX. It's customer experience. It's bringing the UI and UX experts in to have conversations with people. We had a particular customer fly over from Washington recently and spend quite a long time with the team in a detailed workshop, which was really beneficial for our engineers, because the engineers get to talk to, if you want to call them, real users who could say, hey, that's a great idea, it's really cute, it's a nice piece of software, guys, but that's completely not relevant for what my folks need to do. So it's all about dialogue, it's all about back and forth. I mean, Brad, is there anything to add to that? Because deployment issues are always a challenge. There's always something that's going to come and get you.
I mean, every customer that we have is important. The term that we use is mission critical, and there really is no excuse for failure, no possibility of failure, no recourse. These systems have to be available to leadership and VIPs and everyone else in the organization whenever they're needed. And luckily, the smart people at VQ that have designed the system have an excellent track record when it comes to delivering that capability. And that's why within the community of folks that consume this product, we have, I think, an excellent reputation and continue to see them embracing the capabilities that we provide.
The reality is that the customers kind of give us the clue about what we should do next. That comes back to that listening, to what they're saying and to hearing where they want to go and what their issues are. And that really drives our development. And when you come down to what does that feature look like, is that button green or blue, or is it at the top of the screen or the right, or is it Metro, or is it VQ&A? That's where obviously we get into a lot of back and forth about coming up with concepts and designs and sharing those with customers and beta programs and proof of concepts and so on. In terms of that cycle, we've really gained massively from a colleague, John English, who joined the company a number of years ago, who runs the product management side. He sort of, if you like, is the controller of what the engineering teams are tasked with doing. I don't mean that in a way that he tells them what to do, but he sort of has the task of filtering out is it a request, is it a real problem, or is it just somebody saying, I just like that button to be blue instead of green? Well, why do you need that? Is it a real question, or is it actually something that's stopping you deliver to your mission? So there is a whole process and a structure around that, and doesn't stop the passionate debates. We quite often get I hear a customer go, no, we really got to do this, and I said, well, stop everything, we should just develop that. And he goes, no, Giles, get back in your box, that's not relevant, that's my green blue button argument. You're actually not talking about the bigger problem. But Brad, you've seen it from the outside in your Cisco days about how things are developed and how VQ listens to customers. Have you got anything to chip in on that? Because it'd be interesting to get a slightly different perspective.
So one of the great things about VQ is that I noticed when I was at Cisco, and that continues to be the case, is that when customers come to us with requirements, and they all have very unique requirements, I think we proved that we can be nimble, and if those requirements make sense and make the product better and are a capability which can be enjoyed by multiple customers, then we're able to do that. And another thing that I would mention, besides all the incredibly complex and brilliant ideas that we get from our customers, we also have such a great and deep relationship with the Cisco team, as Giles mentioned before. So they become a force multiplier for us. I mean, there's a lot of really smart people that work at Cisco, and they're out there, having great conversations with our customers and with potential customers. And so just as they do for the Cisco mothership, they also are a great source of new ideas and capabilities for us. And so we take that, and if possible, the product continues to evolve. We have a lot of people that come to us from the DoD and Intel communities because they have different use cases within their organization. So just like all other organizations, DoD and the federal government are consuming cloud services and using things like Microsoft Teams or Cisco WebEx. And that serves them pretty well for a lot of their unclassified but sensitive conversations that they have. But again, those organizations have other kinds of workflows too that involve what we call, classified or secret conversations. And often those types of conversations and video conferences can't be handled on the internet. They can't be handled in a solution that's consumed by other entities. And so they come to us because of our architecture and our ability to provide the security capabilities that we spoke about previously, based on our on-premise architecture and also our ability to deliver high-definition quality video conferencing above and beyond what might be found on other solutions.
Being able to deliver to the service requirements, to use the term their mission, requires you to be adaptable, and the software has to be tweaked to those use cases. And how we get drawn into those conversations is typically through reputation and through our good friends at Cisco, who know us very well, who've said, look, we've worked with these guys, we partner with them, they deliver those types of things over here or over there. And that gets us into a lot of the new opportunities that feed the pipeline. But on top of that, we also are growing the services that people have initially deployed. So I mentioned earlier, one customer's with us for 4.5 years, I think now. They've grown from an initial kind of, well, we'll give it a go and see how it goes, and it's not really that important, to actually it's multiple networks in multiple environments in multiple geos, delivering different types of services. From a kind of classic what we would call white glove experience, where you'd have somebody managing a call because it's maybe a really, really high profile VIP call and people don't want to be goofing around pressing buttons and things like that. They need to focus on the content of the meeting and the presentation and the discussions that they're having, not the technology, through to massive amounts of self-service. And that self-service could just be a large-scale audio conference. So although for the purpose of this recording we're using WebEx and we have video enabled, for most participants who consume this, they'll just be hearing this as an audio conference, and we obviously enable that type of functionality as well.